Yes, welcome back to the South Australian Sports Show. Time to turn our attention to gymnastics, Pop, and what a better way to do it than bringing a gold medalist from the Commonwealth Games. Of course, Sam Offord joins us. Sam, thanks for your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys. Gymnastics,
mate, the profile of gymnastics in South Australia, how do you see it?
Well, it could always be better. All sports, it could always be better, I suppose, apart from if you're not one of the big sports in the state or the country. We've got a couple of high-profile athletes. Blake Gaudry, who represented us in the trampolining gymnastics side of things at the London 2012 Olympics, and then a lot of other young males and females coming through the sport. So plenty to be happy about, but plenty more we can do, hopefully.
Mate, we didn't do well as far as athletes going into Rio. Been a bit of a drop-off. We've done well previously. Any reason that you can put a finger to that it just has dropped off this Olympics?
Yeah, I suppose there's a number of things. With the men's side, we had a lot of retirees, which then depletes your stocks, and you've got young guys who are trying to come up through the ranks. They've also had a bit of a change of national structure there in the men's side of things, as well as then a lot of injuries. So all of those things add up. In the women's side of things, unfortunately, not qualifying a team for the first time in a long time, so they'll get one athlete to the games, which is obviously not ideal. But similar thing for them, a lot of experienced athletes who dropped off the perch and retired, and then a few injuries there. So it's still plenty of positives for gymnastics, but and they'll get representatives there, just not what they was ideal and what they wanted.
Yeah, I've had a little bit to do with gymnastics, and Sam's aware of this because I bring my daughter to Sam as a physiotherapist.
That's a relief. I thought you were going to say you'd been a gymnast.
Not much chance for me. But I'm aware, obviously, the amount of time, effort, training, concentration, discipline that's required. And I'm not saying that it's different in other sports, but gymnastics is quite unique. And if at the very least you don't succeed at the elite level, it does give you a good platform to either go off to other sports, but just as a person as a whole, I think it's got so much to offer.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing that we try and talk about in gymnastics. As you said, everybody struggles for numbers in their sport, and gymnastics is no different. It's such a time-rich sport. You've got to spend so much time just to get to a competitive level, and at such a young age that it is very difficult to get people to commit to that kind of time very early on. But we use it and talk about it and try and promote it as a sport that will improve you dramatically in your physical capabilities with whichever sport you then choose to go into, if we unfortunately lose you from gymnastics. But it does help for so many other things, so we value it very highly.
And every sport we talk to, they're all talking about getting hold of that child earlier and earlier. It's becoming. Gymnastics obviously is wanting to do the same thing, but keeping in the back of the mind for parents especially that gymnastics is a great complement to other sports, as you've highlighted, but it's just getting hold of them at that young age.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of different initiatives that we try. There's Kinder Gym, which is kind of how I got involved in it, jumping over the couch too much. Mum was scared I was going to break it. So, you've got active kids, and often there's not a lot of sports they can do before a school age. So, we try and grab them via those types of initiatives and then get them into our club scenarios where there's lots of clubs around Adelaide and the rest of South Australia. So hopefully that's working. We keep them there and keep them interested, and they go on to either our levels programs where they really enjoy gymnastics as a fun thing, or they go on to the elite side of things. So.
I was just looking at the men in particular down at Gymnastics SA. I'm sort of half surprised we didn't qualify, because because you can look at it one way and say we haven't qualified, we may not be good enough. But I tell you what, there's some talent down there that is quite extraordinary.
Absolutely, there is. There's always a lot of talent, very good coaching, and all of those things, and a good facility down there. So, I mean, as I talked about the restructure within the men's side of things, especially, we've had the AIS has put on the Centre of Excellence there in Canberra. There was some time where there wasn't a program there. They've brought that back. There's 10 athletes there in that program, and 4 of those are from Adelaide. So we've got Clay Stevens, Chris Remkes, Ben Congetti and Sean O'Hara that are there at the moment. So all athletes that have come through our system here in Adelaide are making up 40% of that program. So we're developing a lot of good stuff here in Adelaide, and we've just got to hope that whole team grows and prospers together as a group in Canberra and gets that Olympic berth come 2020 in Tokyo.
Yeah, Sam, I don't want to embarrass you, but I want to go back a little bit on your career.
Yes, go for it.
You talked about jumping the couch as a kid.
Yes.
Then your mum got you into gymnastics.
Yep.
What kept you in gymnastics? Because you see that, we've just touched on it, that the kids are into it and then suddenly they veer off. What kept you on the path to stay? If you were talking to a kid now, if I brought my daughter in and wanted to do gymnastics, what would you say to her to remain on track?
I think one of the big things that kept me in the sport was it's so challenging and it's so different day to day. There's 4 apparatus in the artistic side for the women's and 6 for the men's, and then obviously a multitude of different skills for rhythmic gymnastics and trampoline. There are other Olympic disciplines. I just found that daily training environment where you just had so many different things to learn and do was probably the thing that kept me there. Up until about, I think it was year 3 or something in school, I was playing soccer and cricket. My school wasn't big enough to have an AFL team, but I was still playing those on the weekends. Got to a point where I had to choose between one or the other. And I think that daily training environment that was that made it really tough and a challenge for gymnastics, really, I enjoyed that. But as well, and is a really important thing, I think, is to have a group of people that are training together. I mean, I had a lot of friends and we grew up and trained for 3 or 4 years together. And that was that real social connection, which I think all sports talk about. So I had a core group that kind of kept me interested. So if your daughter does want to come and do gymnastics, let me know. I'll tell you.
You'll look after it.
The
other thing, jumping ahead now to the Olympic Games or the Commonwealth Games, which you've been at, and I was fortunate in my time at the Institute, the training hall for basketball, connected by tunnel, as you know, to the gymnasts. And basketballs like to think they were gymnasts, they were horrible. And the gymnasts like to think they were basketballs, and they're actually a little bit better than the other way around. But the diet and the strictness that they have to follow is amazing. Then as soon as they finish competing, it's amazing how much they can consume. For you, did that, I mean, you still like you were in pretty good shape, but did you go through that period where you were committed for so long with your diet that suddenly it was over, you went, you know what, I'm going to try a whole lot of that stuff all at once?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it is, you have to be, gymnastics is one of those sports in all the disciplines of gymnastics that you're manipulating your own body weight.
Absolutely.
So the lighter you are, the easier you've made it on yourself. So it is one of those sports where it's definitely advantageous for you to be as light as you can and lean and strong and all of those things. It's why I think it's, I'm probably biased things, it's my sport, but I think it's the hardest sport in the world. I think there's a sport that challenges you in so many different ways, as does any of the gymnastics disciplines. So yeah, you definitely relax and take a breath and go, oh, okay, I don't have to be as strict on myself. And that can also be a challenging transition as well. But fun times for me after gymnastics.
I think talking about diet too, it's an important thing though for kids especially because
why are you looking at me when you say that?
We'll talk about that off air. There are a couple of things we need to address. But for kids to learn a little bit about their diet, be aware of, you don't want them to become too body conscious, but you certainly want a healthy respect for your own body. They do learn all that. And I guess we should point out too that you don't need to be an elite gymnast to be part of it. There are clubs around the state that you can get involved with.
Absolutely. I mean, you get in touch with our office. Hopefully I'll give you the number at the end. But there's a lot of clubs, smaller clubs, there's some bigger clubs, and gymnastics is, we want to promote gymnastics as a sport for everybody. There's obviously the elite side of it, but you can go and do any of our gymnastics sports and do that, once a week, twice a week, up to, 10 or 11, 12 sessions per week that our elite athletes are doing. So lots of different clubs, and you can really just enjoy being a part of one of our gymnastic sports.
All right, well, we're talking about that. Of course, the Nationals artistics are coming up. What can we expect?
So most of the team leaving in a couple of days, and that'll be for a week, so the artistic men's and women's. It'll be a big event there in Melbourne at the Hisense Arena because part of it will form the Olympic trials for the women and also for the men. So going to be a big event there. So we've got a strong team. There's going to be about 19 from the men's and women's side in the first week, and then something like 80 odd to 100 somewhere in there. I don't know the exact numbers on me, but for the second week with trampolining, rhythmic, and then our sports acro team. So hopefully looking forward to some big results from a lot of our athletes.
Poppy touched on it there with the women, and they do a really healthy way of staying, how to maintain your weight. So from that point of view, gymnastics is great for that, so you don't get paranoid about you. But the mass of the athletes sometimes, I marvelled at the Russians and the United States guys that came out. For you competing against those guys, when you see them come out, they're just ripped beyond belief. All the gymnasts were. All the gymnasts. I mean, it didn't work out that well for Rick Dresnick that ran into the pommel horse at that time. But I mean, how much time is spent in the gym away from the apparatus?
Most of the gymnastics training is in the gymnastics hall, but a lot of it is all about general body preparation and getting strong and being flexible. So a huge portion of training is that. If I talk back to my time, it was 30 to 35 hours a week worth of training, and so it'd be 3.5 hours in the morning and similar in the afternoon. Most of that morning training session was all on that strength and body preparation stuff. So you need to be that strong to be able to do the sport effectively and not be injured. So I'd say it'll probably close to half of the time is spent on just getting your body ready and big enough and strong enough so that you can stand next to those Russians and USA gymnasts and say, I belong here next to you guys as well. All
right, mate, just one more question because we have to go. I got so many questions I want to ask. They talk about in footy now, the skills have dropped off. We'll use footy as an example because most people can relate to the footy because they're spending more time doing other things. Do you sense in gymnastics that the shift could go to too much time in the weight room and not enough time on the floor? Do you think there's a balance?
There definitely is, and it's a really challenging time. You have different, at this elite level, different athletes will push the sport in a certain direction.
Yep.
There's one of the guys, so he's from Japan, Kohei Uchimura, so not a name that everybody will be familiar with, but he's won every event in the all-around, every World Championships and the Olympics since 2008, I believe it was. So he's, sorry, even before that, so after Athens, he's won them all. And he's a really slender build and just has absolutely textbook execution of all of his skills. So not a big guy. Yeah. So you see these changes all the time. It's about developing and changing the way you do the sport depending on who's kind of leading it at the time. So that is a dangerous thing, and people just got to be on top of those things with their training.
As we go, phone number, website?
gymsa.com.au, you can get all the information from there, or 8294 8288 to get in touch with the office. They will tell you which club that you can go to that's close to you, and hopefully your daughter's enrolled next week.
All right, Sam, thanks for coming and give us some of your time. Stay with us. Still a few more things to come.